All right. Welcome everybody out there in social media land. I am Dr. Kent Key and we are the Flint Public Health Youth Academy. We're so excited to have you all here for another episode of A Youth Perspective. Today is the first official gun violence health messaging campaign show that we will have a series of for this summer and early fall. We are very excited to really talk about some of the social conditions in our country, in our communities, in our world that impacts the overall health and well-being of all residents globally. On today's show, we want to kind of talk about violence in general and how it has been socialized into specifically the American kind of fabric. I mean, it's in other countries as well, but specifically how it is socialized in this country and how that is playing out in creating social norms and acceptance and normalization of certain behaviors and certain trends that we've been seeing over time. And so again, I thank you all. Take a moment really quick, like and share this on your cell phone, on your iPad, on your computer. Let everybody know that the Flint Public Health Youth Academy, we are on the air. And again, we are excited and delighted that you chose to spend this time with us on this Friday evening. By the way, happy Cinco de Mayo. So I know a lot of people are out celebrating and trying to get out and celebrate. You can celebrate as soon as we're done with this show. All right. So we're excited again to have you all. We have our FIRE family, some of our interns, some of our mentors on. I'm going to ask those that can come on camera to go ahead and come on camera. Let's give some introductions, and then we're going to get right into our topic. We'll start off with Cruz, then we'll pass it to Vanessa, and then we'll go to Cole, and then we'll go from there. Go ahead, Cruz. Go ahead and greet the people.
Hey, hope everyone's doing well. My name is Cruz Dewar. I'm a graduating senior English major from Morehouse College. I grew up in Flint. I've been with FIRE for around almost 4 years now. I think that sounds about right. But yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome. Cole?
Oh, I thought it was Vanessa.
I'm sorry,
next.
Vanessa. Dr. Dedanzanek, Brooklyn, New York.
Hi, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm one of FIRE's mentors, and I'm glad to be here and be a participant on the show.
Great. Cole?
Hey, I am one of the interns. My name is Cole Mays. I'm also happy to be here.
Great. Amir?
Hello. My name is Amir Brown. Sorry I couldn't be on camera. A lot of stuff going on in the house. So college student at U of M Flint. Glad to be here and discuss this topic today. So yeah.
Taishay?
Hi, I'm Taishay Brady. I'm very happy to be here. Right now I'm driving, so I'm gonna turn off my camera. I'm stopped at a red light, but hi guys, how's it going? I'm excited for the show.
Safety first. Thanks, Taishay. Christian?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm Christian, Cole's brother and the son of Melissa Mays, which is pretty cool. I am almost done with Mott for automotive engineering, so that's pretty cool.
Awesome. Melissa Mays?
Hi, Melissa Mays. I am a mentor for FIA, a Flint resident activist social worker, and parent of a few of all of our kids on here because they're all awesome.
Awesome. Reverend Dr. Sarah Bailey? We know she's in the car, so she might jump on a little later. All right, so let's get started. Listen, you all, it's a lot happening in our world. It's a lot happening in our country. It's a lot happening in our regions, in our states, in our counties, in our cities, on every level. And one thing that we see that's consistent, no matter what or which of those levels things are manifesting on, we continue to see violence, right? And before we kind of go specifically into gun violence, kind of let's talk about, give me your thoughts on how and why do you think violence is socialized in our fabric the way it is? So for example, we use it in everyday terms. So when we do presentations at scientific meetings, I always say, don't call them bullet points, right? But we use violent language. I'll shoot you an email, or I'll tackle that, or target population, like somebody wants to be walking around with a target on their back, right? So these are just examples, simple examples of how violent language is so socialized in how we speak, how we talk, how we communicate with each other, that it's really not a surprise that it has become so desensitized in our communities. Anyone want to weigh in on that and maybe give some examples or your thoughts? Go ahead, Cruz.
I think a lot of what it has to do with is like what you mentioned earlier about socialization. It's kind of inherent in a lot of what America does. Whether we look at our past and our history about imperialism and colonization, how it came to be. If we look at different things like how the patriarchy operates and how power is used in our country, and then if we compare about how a lot of how we control and enact things in America is through things like power and violence, or the threat of potential violence. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's commonplace in our country. And then even if we go past that of like how it happens in reality, when it comes to the type of things that we feed our children, it's the same thing. I will be the first to admit I enjoy action video games and movies, but some of those things do help influence how we see and think about these different things. If you don't have narratives that help clash against them and that suggest things like about how important life might be, or that violence is not necessarily the answer, even though at the end of every action movie it is, that confusing narrative that we explain to people, especially our children, but even it gets reinforced as you grow older. You start to believe that that's what's natural per se, and it's not. It necessarily shouldn't be that way.
Thank you, Cruz. Cole, go ahead.
So yeah, it's like totally what freaking I'm sorry, I'm gonna say that again. Totally what Cruz said. It's just became a normality. But when it comes to like English literature, we kind of look to violence because it's an automatic and easy set story. You know how like when you see a character with a scar on his face, it's like, whoa, dude, that's pretty cool. It tells a story without actually telling one. So when you kind of like say like vigorous terms like violent terms, like, you know, what really tells a story on upon that, yeah. Also, yeah, I am one to also play a bunch of violent video games as well, but and it's just kind of like a normal thing to say like a bunch of the terminology to use, just because it just became a normality of simplicity, because maybe it's also tuned to the negativity bias of, well, violence is never really a positive thing, and maybe the first thing we think of when we say something, you know, is something negative. It's kind of more simple. So negative things being like so-and-so shot, gun, this, bullet hole, bullet shoot, stuff like that. I know those are terrible examples, but in like a English sense. But the fact that, yeah, I mean, it's violence is in the Bible. It's violence is one of the other things in, you know, the Family Guy intro, apart from, you know, violence in movies and sex on TV. Because that's basically it. It's a simple way to display conflict. And it's easy to make some story and develop it and manifest it out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to just add on to that. Interesting thing as well is that the young kids, the youth, a lot of them tend to be culturalized about the music, the characters, people that they idolize. Even just looking at fiction books, when you're reading a book and they have some kind of suspense and some trauma or some violence, you begin to visualize what that looks like, what it could be. Or sometimes these kids are in gang initiation, or they want to be an outside part of family. Those things and acceptance come with some form of violence. And so this is some way for them to kind of grow into an acceptance mode with other groups in society. So the question could be also, when is the limit? How much violence is too much violence? Where do we draw the line? What is acceptable? What is not acceptable? Is it called violence when it's like self-defense? So it really has that thin line of really how we look at it, but it's really society that gives these norms and paradigms of what it looks like. So we got to really ask ourselves, what is really violence?
Yeah. And see, when I think about being socialized to violence, I remember being in undergrad and having a professor make a statement that the reason why there was so much inner city crime was because of gangster rap. And I gave a rebuttal to that and said, respectfully, I disagree. One, because a lot of people want to throw off on gangster rap and heavy metal groups, right? And see like those are violent cultures, but it wasn't music at all that taught me violence as a child, right? It literally was, again, as I said before, seeing Tom try to kill Jerry on the cartoon, or watching Wile E. Coyote try to eat or blow up the Road Runner with the big TNT bomb. And like, it was always so many different depictions. Every hero had a nemesis that they had to fight, you know, whether it was Batman or Superman or, you know, He-Man, She-Ra, they all had nemesis. They all had weapons, right? And so this was socialized in the consciousness of kids that are looking at these things every day. And so it becomes normal, it becomes acceptable, and then these kids grow up with these mindsets and they become us, adults, right? And so, you know, I said a long time ago, don't blame gangster rap. You better blame Walt Disney and some of these cartoon creator companies, Warner Brothers and all these others that started socializing even before we were born. Our parents and grandparents was watching Popeye beat up Brutus. Now that was more in black and white, but literally this stuff was happening and it continues to happen. I see Reverend Dr. Sarah Bailey has her hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry that I'm not on the camera right now, but you guys know that I'm in the car. And I love what Vanessa says, that this is what we have to start challenging. What do we consider to be violent? And I know that there's a lot of language that is used that can be considered violent type language, even as we move forward in this technological society, when we start talking about bullets and those kinds of things, and not recognizing that it sort of desensitizes us to the violent language. And then once your language has been desensitized, it's so easy for your mind to be desensitized to this violence that's going on. And what is it? What is violent? You know, is it me beating somebody up? Is it me cursing somebody out? What is considered to be violent? I love that question, because I think we need to really focus in on that. And it might give us some clues as to how we might be able to penetrate into this culture that's seeming to develop within our communities.
Great, thank you. And I see Melissa and then Cruz.
No, I mean, that I just want to go off of that because it's so fluid too. Like when what Vanessa had brought up about you know, what's self-defense, what is violence, and where is the limit? Because we're not teaching that, we're not learning that. And I think Cruz is going to talk more about this, but I was brought up in a military family. You know, guns aren't violent, and you know, fighting for your rights aren't violent. And then, you know, you hear it all the time, we're fighting for this and fighting for that. So everything is, you know, we use violent terms for everything, especially just trying to get a point across. And yeah, how far until it completely desensitizes us? And I fear that that's where we're at now, because watching, especially going through COVID, watching all these people who have died, and people are like, oh, well, they're old, or they were sick, or oh, well, and not realizing it's a human life. But also I think that we're not being taught, and we're not even teaching our children that these actions, these violent actions, have very lasting and long-term and permanent impacts. And nobody's seeing that, because again, we're seeing, you know, these people we idolize, these wealthy folks, they're not getting, you know, the rich people on TV, they're not seeing consequences of their actions. So, you know, it comes back being like, okay, well, it won't affect me either. And so that's just you don't know what violence is, what constitutes violence, what's the definition, because it's so fluid depending on your stature, you know, in society. But also, what about the consequences? What does that even mean anymore?
Yeah, awesome. Cruz?
Yeah, I agree. The definition is very loose. And I might even suggest that that's on purpose because depending on who's enacting or suggesting what violence is, it benefits them for you to not be able to concretely define it or say what it is. I don't mean to push back, honestly, but I do want to also rectify and suggest that, violence is not a new thing. The difference is the amount of accessibility we have to witnessing it, as well as the means of perpetuating it. I mean, like, that's the only difference. Violence has been a thing since people were a thing.
Yeah.
And so the issue now is that we witness it and become desensitized to it. It's not something that we necessarily feel anymore unless we're actually engaging in the violent encounter. And additionally, now there are even bigger steps that we can take that remove us from it further. So that being said, like, one of the things that was sitting on my mind is how we do things like glorify war. So one of those things that you're taught as a child learning in the public education system is like, you have to fight for freedom, right? To gain independence and things like that. And the reason that we continue to have wars is to keep that going. And that suggestion, so that we don't necessarily believe that war is bad. And that's up to you and your own moral compass to decide that or determine that. But that being said, that exposure means something, especially now that we gotten to the point with technology where things like drones or automatic weapons are able to kill multiple people from a distance. And now you've even separated yourself further, I think. So, like, when you're doing something violent to someone and it's like right there next to you, I assume there's a different layer, there's a different understanding of that life. But because now we've gotten to the point where, these things can happen and you're miles away from them, it kind of pushes us away from it to a degree.
Yeah.
And so, considering all of that, I think that's why we are where we are in society now, and how we don't have, as a strong enough appreciation for life, and that we feel distance from things like violence, even though they are happening right in front of us.
So that's interesting. And even to also, you kind of talked a little bit about how it's not new. We just see it more and we have more accessibility to it. Goes to what Melissa says, it's fluid, it has morphed, because there are violent connotations now that we didn't have 15, 20 years ago, like cyberbullying or cyber stalking, or as we grow technologically and as we evolve as a society, local, national, and globally, so does violent opportunities and ways that violence can be perpetuated. And so it's very nuanced, yet the core of it is, again, in my perspective, how people are socialized to think about it. Like you said about the whole war thing, right? How people are socialized to think about violence. Dr. Bailey, your hand is still up. Was that from last time, or you have something else?
No, I don't have anything else, but I think this discussion right now is in the proper vein as to what are we really thinking and what are we really doing? And yes, from the 60s, we fought for everything. And that's that whole grit about fighting. It's me against you, it's us against them. And it's that kind of separation that keeps us into these, you have something that I want, or I have something that you want, and I'm going to take it. I'm not going to negotiate for it. I'm going to take it from you because I'm stronger, I'm bigger, I'm better. I'm more powerful than you. And so I can do that. And it's that entitlement that I can take your stuff, whatever your stuff is, without asking for it or negotiating for it.
Oh, kind of how we got this, never, like what happened with on Thanksgiving, quote unquote. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Yes, I just want to continue to echo all the sentiments that's coming on here, because everything's relevant to violence, even from one spectrum to the next. But it has come so relevant into our everyday language and the tone of voice that that there's even like definitions and things that's kind of like in society a secret connotation of violence. Just the other day, I heard of a young lady that was at work, and had an issue with somebody at work with cases, and then she started yelling out 38 hots, 38 hots, 38 hots, like what's that? And kind of find out. I mean, I had to look that up, and that's you can
What was
Google
the
that.
term?
38 hots. You know,
38 hats?
hots. And Cruz is shaking like he know what I'm talking about. But it's
I think I got an idea. Yeah.
right. So it's like it becomes like the norm of everyday language. Like, what is this? I mean, it got her fired because I'm like, well, what is that? And it becomes so relevant when when you have people coming into the workforce with guns, coming to the schools with guns, coming to places with guns, and these premature words in here and that people not that familiar with, and they're all subliminal and here and there. Like, wow, you in a whole different society, in a mindset of what's really going on around you.
Yeah.
But the language is totally different. And I had to look that up and to really, you can Google that and see what it looks like. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So someone else had to take the liberty to do the same thing. They're like, nah, she had to get fired. But it's like, you know,
So what did it mean, Cruz? Do you know?
It means, Cruz.
Oh, go ahead, whoever.
It means that you're so angry that you could bring a gun. So when you have these things in heightened sense in the workforce, in corporate and in other places, this become a threat. People's not taking any chance, but some of the things they're so comfortable in the lyrics of what's going on that's surrounded by violence that it becomes part of the everyday conversation.
So it's referring to like the bullets, and you know they're hot after they're fired.
Got it.
So
right.
yeah.
And it also goes to what you all were saying, some of you were saying earlier, like there's different levels. Vanessa was saying, what is too much? Kids grow up, they play on the playground. You took my ball, they push each other, they shove each other, they may even throw a punch. But guess what? They're back playing again in a couple hours, right? Now you got kids shooting each other on the playground because you didn't pick me for a team, and that child is dead. There's no more playing together. There's no more reconciling, learning how to socialize. You know, back in the day, that was actually a grade on your report card. It was called citizenship. How you socialize and how you showed you were a good citizen with those around you, right? And so someone might say, well, just the fight on the playground was violent. But that's a lot different than the gunfight on the playground, right? And so this is interesting as we think about how things look, how things are so fluid and so vague that it can manifest in so many different ways. So this has been a wonderful discussion, and we are going to continue to elevate this discussion as we continue the different shows in this series on violence and gun violence for our health messaging campaign for 2023. I want to kind of transition, though, more specifically to gun violence, given the fact that we have been inundated with so many mass shootings, homicides, but today just kind of concentrating on just gun violence in general, and the impact it has had on us globally. I think I said before in one of our meetings, when I was growing up, we had fire drills and tornado drills. Now kids in kindergarten and pre-K and first grade have to have active shooter drills, right? You have to have those in your workplace now. Like these, it's so real now that it's becoming normalized in the mandatory trainings in schools and in occupations. And Melissa shared some stats with us in our meeting yesterday that 13,900 people have been killed by gun violence from the beginning of this year as of May 2nd. And that's only and that was day 122 of the 365, right? About over 113 people are being shot and killed every day is what that statistic tells us, right? And then when we think more in-depthly, that is one thing when it's numbers, but it's other stuff when it's happening right next door to you, right in your own backyard, right? So I'm going to elevate a situation, and then I'm going to ask Cruz to elevate his. So in February, here in the state of Michigan, specifically on Michigan State University campus, we had a mass shooting that occurred in 2 buildings of the campus in East Lansing. 3 students were killed and 5 others were injured. Like, it's one thing to hear about it happening in California or in Florida or in Texas. It's another thing to hear it happening not only in your state, but in the institution that you work at, and in the building where I have colleagues, and where some of the students that I mentor, where they have classes and where they study, right? It's a different, it takes on a whole different perspective. And so what we ask, I see your hand, Tasha, give me a second. We had asked each of the interns on yesterday to kind of elevate one of the shootings that really impacted them, that they've saw recently or within the last year. Just kind of one, share what the situation was, and then the impact it had on them. Go ahead, Cruz, and then Taisha.
So I've had 2. Recently, there was a mass shooting here in Atlanta. That was not too far from where I am. Because there hasn't been a lot of information, I didn't choose that as the main one I wanted to talk about. But the feeling that I felt, like I didn't feel safe, like just in general, that I was like 10 minutes away from it. And then to know like that it made national news, and that family and friends were checking in on me because they were worried and things like that, to be put in that situation was awful to me, and I wasn't directly there. And so then to, when I went during February, when that happened to MSU, I had friends on campus, and I had to speak to them because they work across the building and things like that. And so it's just awful that this is starting to become way more prominent in each of our individual lives than what it used to be, or at least that's what it seems like. The one that really compelled me, that I had more information on, was the mass shooting that happened at a school in Nashville at the end of last month. And the reason why it pulled me in is because I came across it on TikTok one day. I just saw pictures of funeral caskets of children, and that immediately like brought me to like immediate sadness, because it's like children didn't do anything wrong here. And to know that they were young as 9 was really awful. And so, with more information and with time, we found out that it was a former student who did this mass shooting. But even with more context, even like, it's just, it doesn't sit right with you. And, when these type of events happen, you desire justice, you want, safety and comfort to come about. But even after you gain some of those things, it doesn't necessarily make you feel better. The initial things that comes to me is like, we got to stop this from happening again. But as we see, with more time and the fact that policy isn't moving, events like this just keep happening.
Thank you, Cruz. Taisha?
So the most recent one that impacted me was actually the that happened at International Academy of Flint. I was actually in that area when it happened because my brother had a fallout with my family, and my brother's a special ed kid, and he ran away. And I started to panic, and it really brought like a huge amount of fear into my heart, because he ran away like right across, like right in that area of International Academy when the shooting was happening. So it's freaky, because I'm like, what if my brother got caught into the crossfire? I've already lost a family member to gun violence, and all I could think was, I don't want to lose another one.
Thank you, Taisha. So glad that your brother was safe and no harm happened. Anyone else want to share any of the occurrences of gun violence that really has stuck with them? I see Amir's hand, and then Cole.
Yeah, for me, I think it was the one, the Uvalde mass shooting, and also the one that happened at Oxford. Because Oxford is the one that, like, proximity wise, like Flint to Oxford, that's about, I'd say, 40 some minutes maybe away. And that kind of really affected me, because like what we kept learning more and more about, what happened. And it was more and more red flag signs of like leading up to it, where like more could have been done to prevent it. And I think that's one of the most starking parts of some of these instances, where there's definitely some signs where it could have been stopped, but nothing was done up until that point. to, to help potentially prevent it or save some more lives. And the Uvalde one is very, very sad. Elementary age school kids dying. I got cousins and family members, around that age, and it was just like, dang, man, like a guy just went in there and just went crazy, and it's like, bro, like what, like when will it end? When will be like the breaking point? Because I thought Sandy Hook, would be like one of the main points of like stopping, something. But now it's just, it keeps on and on every year. It just keeps on happening, and it's a very, very sad situation.
Thank you, Cole.
So yeah, I was gonna say also, yeah, Oxford high school shooting. Amir, yeah. They're like, I couldn't remember the name of the Texas one, but I was kind of searching more stuff about Oxford. But yeah, it's freaking terrible that there was a lot of stuff that was going on. He was sending pictures, and he was like sending images of the gun that his parents gave him. And so what I saw is it like, yeah, it's like literally like 40 minutes away, like exactly what Amir said. And it's just like, I mean, like the whole entire like situation is just terrible. Like the parents of the case who encouraged him, who what they said at trial is just like, I'm glad that my child didn't kill himself. That's literally what they said in court when he took 4 people's lives and injured 7. And that like, and yeah, once again, it's all the stuff that came out, the stuff with like the political stuff. I'm not entirely sure if I should bring that up. But the fact that they encouraged him, and then they were trying to, and then they, tried to flee court. And the trial is still going on, by the way, which is kind of surprising. I think that enablers who kind of give him the gun and then encourage him and then do nothing to actually stop him should probably be in trial as well, especially when it's in this bad of a case. I mean, there's no like good case for like anyone encouraging anyone to do like any school shooting. It's terrible, and it's just kind of just fearful about like how many parents actually do like provide such dogma to their children. And also just like, man, I mean, of course, like it being so close is just freaking terrifying, but like everything else about it, freaking
But you
terrible.
said a key word is terrifying. It's terrifying that people just went to school. Like that's all the person did that day. They did nothing wrong, but got up, got dressed, and went to school.
Yeah.
Right.
But people did tell the teacher on him. People did actually say stuff about it, and there was no precautions. It's nowadays, I don't think that's even possible. I think whenever they see anything like that nowadays, no, we're going in full SWAT mode. They're not anything, but you can't do that when we can't really like be super particular or defensive about it, because we don't have police right next to the freaking, unless it's like a kind of like certain campuses and stuff that have security. But even then, they don't have guns or anything, which once again, you shouldn't fight fire with fire, because it just creates more fire. But yeah, it is sad and it is terrifying.
Thanks, Cole. Melissa?
So one of the things that when I was trying to pick just one, just one story that got me, and I couldn't. I was actually looking in the month of April. There were a ton of headlines across the United States, from the state of Washington to Texas to South Carolina to Pennsylvania, of toddlers shot by either toddlers or themselves, or a gun falling off a shelf and shooting them. And I just sat there, and the fact that some of the news stations actually have toddler shot and child shot as search terms. It happens so often. That is, I'm just saying, like, I raised my 3 kids, and they are not toddlers anymore. Sometimes I question it, but what I worried about was them choking on hot dogs, or, falling down the stairs, or, I don't know, like outside falling off their bikes, things like that. That's what I worried about, not somebody shooting my toddler in the face, or my toddler accidentally shooting themselves in the face. And the fact that this isn't more of a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking thing, and people are just like, oh, well, that's what scares me the most out of all of this, is the fact that if we cared for human life, beyond birth even, care for human life, this wouldn't even be a thing. We wouldn't be seeing, it just over and over and over again. It just came up city after. At first I thought like this article had to be a copy of, another way. And it wasn't. Not. It was children shot in the cheek, children shot in the face, children, shot another toddler, a toddler shot another toddler. Yeah. So it just kind of leveled me, because this shouldn't be a headline. This shouldn't be happening. It should be so heartbreaking that people make sure that this doesn't happen. But yet here we are. And that was April. Now we're into May, and I don't even want to look.
Yeah, there was one headline where a young man actually shot his sister. They were teens because she didn't want to play the video game with him. Like literally took her out. So when we think about the impact that guns is having on perpetuating violence and death, it is outrageous. Dr. Bailey?
Yeah, I think the thing that's got me was, time after time again, especially when that shooting at the bank in Tennessee occurred. And the first thing that everybody said was, well, he was in a mental health crisis. Well, if we understand, if what we're trying to say is that people's mental health can lead to this kind of violence, why are we not pouring more resources into the treatment for mental health? So I just see that that's what impacted me the most, is because I don't believe that people with severe mental disabilities are violent in their nature. I mean, there's a lot of violence that's been perpetrated against them, but most of the people that have mental health issues, that's not them trying to be violent towards others. It's the rare occasion when one becomes homicidal, maybe suicidal, but not homicidal. So I'm like, if you really believe that, put more money into mental health and not into all this other stuff that you're doing, or into, let's have more guns. Let's give the teachers guns. Well, some of the teachers have mental health issues. I know some of them, and they've had mental health issues. Why would you give them a gun just because they're in a classroom? They're struggling trying to keep 30 kids from all wanting to go to the bathroom at the same time. So I mean, we are just not thinking through what we need to do. We're just trying to throw a Band-Aid approach and a Band-Aid fix on a very complicated problem.
Thank you. Vanessa, Dr. Denanzini?
Yes, I just want to echo some of the things that Dr. Bailey mentioned. Yes, there is a mental health crisis that's out here, but it's just too much emphasis every time something happened outside what they call the norm. We want to tag it with mental health. Everything is not mental health. Okay, we know mental health is not something new. Mental health did not just become a problem. Mental health is just only becoming more of the focus of where they need to be put and allocate resources to. And they just seem to find just to label it as giving it as everything mental as an excuse. Now, another thing, my biggest concern is what is the PTSD rate with kids or individual or who's witnessing these incidents? Okay, whether it's on TV, whether it's something on the news, or you part of that incident, what is the traumatic event effect of these individuals as they grow up and continue to see violence? It becomes a fear factor. What becomes their triggers when they go places, loud noises here and there? How does that affect them mentally? Is anybody addressing those things? Those are true mental health issues that could be growing into a different spectrum of a problem. As a child that's witnessing violence, gun violence, as they grow up into the adult, are we tackling those things? Are we having these conversations? Who's spearheading narratives? Who's watching these prospective studies? Who's keeping tabs on these individuals that's around them? These are the ones you have to worry about later on, because now what kind of toll has it affected them and later on? So everything is not just mental health. Like Dr. Bailey said, you can't just keep putting the Band-Aid on a gusher wound. You got to tackle it from the inside out. It's not going to get healed like that. But like I said, mental health is not new.
So, and that's probably going to be a whole show on literally a whole show in our campaign, because we've had several conversations about labeling all the perpetrators or majority of the perpetrators that commit mass shootings as having mental health illness, when we think that that is a disservice to those who truly do have it. And most people who are truly do have mental health illness, they have episodes, mind you, but most of them are not getting guns and just going into large crowds and mowing down people. There is a distinct difference between having a mental health illness episode, and someone getting fired or finding out their significant other cheated or some type of thing happened that they didn't like, and then they're not able to control their own emotions and their own rage in that moment. There's a distinct difference. Growing up, I wanted that Kit Kat, and my mom said, you can't have no more candy, right? And if I acted out in my rage in that grocery store, she checked me, right? I couldn't just act out. We have no checks. People have no internal checks now, so they just act out. And unfortunately, they're acting out with guns because they have accessibility to these types of weapons. And so, again, just to reiterate, and we'll have a whole nother show, because it puts another level of stigma on those who actually have mental health problems.
It does.
So you're lumping all of these crazy people doing these crazy shootings, right? And you're trying to say that that's the group of mental illness, and mental illness people are sitting back like, no, I got my issues, but I ain't doing that, right? And so we want to think about the societal impact that is having, the stigma it is having, what Dr. Dedanzane talked about, the level of PTSD it is not only how that's impacting those that witness it, but those that may not even witness it, hearing this every day, constantly every day. It impacts all of us in several ways, right? And so, yeah, this has been a wonderful discussion so far. So then my question to you all would be, what steps can everyday people, groups like the Flint Public Health Youth Academy, groups that are doing kind of like nonviolence work, what steps can we take, in your opinion, to elevate and raise this alarm? And it almost seems like a mute question, because isn't the alarm already raised? Isn't it already on the headlines? Isn't it already on the news every night? But yet we're not seeing the type of action with policy and enforcement that we need to kind of rein these things in, because they're happening too much. And so any ideas, any suggestions? Vanessa?
Yeah, I got a suggestion. Sometimes it may be easy. I'm a big focus on self-care, because if you're healthy, like you say, your health is your wealth, and your health is your mind, right? So if you take care of your health and your mind, it kind of works in synonymous, right? Synonymous together. So the thing is, if you focus on self-care, I'm not saying that you would be desensitized to what's going on, but maybe you be in a better mindset to handle things that come your way. If people are in denial and may need mental health issue consultation and not seeking it, but there's other ways to kind of minimize your aggression if you focus on your health and your wealth, your health and your mental health. I say that because the line of work I've been, when I retired, I looked at death every day. I looked at homicide. I investigated my homicides, and people used to say, "Okay, am I okay? Is things okay with me?" Now, do I see flashbacks to certain cases? Do I recollect a lot of cases and situations out there? Sure, I do. Do I bring it over to the dinner table at night? No, I do not. I have to be able to separate my mindset from reality in the presence, right? So I'm big on focusing on self-care, things that kind of deter your mind from the negativity, from the trauma, so when you can stay focused. So if anything becomes imbalanced, I'll be able to say, okay, I need to be able to regroup, reassess, step back, and kind of reassess what I need to do. So that may be one of the things that people do, and people don't focus too much on self-care. And because we too much with the up and down, running from A to B here and there, and we don't take the time or have the energy to put aside to focus on ourselves first.
Thank you. Dr. Bailey.
Yes, that's awesome. I think that one of the things that we can do that's really simple is a letter writing campaign to our Congress people and say, look, y'all gonna act. We put you in office. We want you to act. And if they get flooded, sometimes it seems like that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work, but it does. Letter writing, where we just flood them with letters, and then we flood them with calls and tell them they need to act, because they can take these assault rifles and they can take these guns off the streets if they choose to. See, this is a choice. You're choosing to let them stay on the streets, and you're choosing to let people have them. There is no reason why anybody that's a civilian in the United States needs to have an assault weapon. No one needs one in the United States. Not even our law enforcement people need to have an assault weapon. Those weapons were made particularly for the battlefield. And we need to get them at least off our streets. Even if we do let them remain on the battlefield, at least get them off our streets, because they're killing our folks. And I'm old. If a mass shooting occurs where I'm at, my only choice is to drop to the floor and play dead. I cannot run. I can't get out of the way. So this is it really touches me, because I had to come to that realization when I realized that I could not do the O.J. Simpson run through the airport any longer. And I needed somebody to wheel me through the airport to get from one destination to the other. So I can't do the running. So I can't get out of the way. An active shooter drill, I don't know how, I think one of our persons who's on here today said the other day about her little baby, who's about 3 or 4 years old. He's not going to keep quiet. He's not going to lay down in an active shooter drill and be quiet, because the first thing he's going to say, can I get up? When can I get up? So we gotta get these weapons off our streets.
Thank you. And I see Christian put in the chat, it would definitely help if the government did literally anything other than saying, well, there's nothing we can do about this gun problem, so just arm yourself and deal with it. Absolutely. So as we prepare to close out the show, we literally will have a series of shows on violence and gun violence, and not just looking at the negative impact, but also offering some prevention strategies and hopefully some resources and some action steps that our listening audience and partners and collaborators can actually engage with to help hopefully and positively impact the level of gun violence that we're seeing in our communities across this country. One of the reasons why we're taking on this is because violence is a public health crisis. Violence prevention is one of the strategies of public health, and we are the Flint Public Health Youth Academy. And so for us, this is real. It is every day. We will have some shows where we'll talk to people in law enforcement who have to carry guns as part of their job, right, in this country. Talk about the violence that they see and the level of violence and how it impacts them. There are countries across this world who their police doesn't have guns, and they have less homicide rates, less mass shootings, less domestic violence incidents as a country, and they don't even have armed police yet. We have armed police, and it's not impacting the level of violence that we see in our country. We're going to also have some shows with victims of gun violence, those that survived it physically, and then family members of individuals who may have been impacted by gun violence. And then we're going to talk to hopefully get some policymakers on here and interview a couple of groups that are doing violence prevention work in this area and throughout this country, because again, it is important to us that we take action as residents, as citizens of this country. I don't think we're going to be able to wait for it to happen through policy. We're going to have to push the envelope and really start creating effective solutions, so that we don't have to worry about, it used to be a time when a mom is taking their child for the first time to school, the first time that child is going to school in that child's life. Oh, that mom worries about him missing her, or maybe him or her not being, getting along with the kids is normally the worst worry. We're hearing the child cry. That's heartbreaking. But now the mom has to worry about a freaking active shooter situation. And so this is something that we want to continue to have dialogue and share our perspectives on, with the hope that we will lead from perspective sharings to solution generation and creation. So again, we thank you all out there in social media land. This has been another episode of A Youth Perspective. I am Dr. Kent Key. We are the Flint Public Health Academy, where public health is everything and everything is public health. Have a good night, everybody.